the issue of taxes for educational institutions that are not for profit. Actually, the government doesn't understand it yet because there's now a movement to change the law. So the IRS is trying to get that law changed. So just so you know, So I've been in education now for 10 years. And before that, really, I was just an engineer. And over the past 10 years, I've come to more deeply appreciate what a crisis we have in Ghana. I got involved with education because I thought there was a problem. And I thought it was a significant enough problem that I changed my career. But actually, things are worse than I thought. And I want to just give a very quick example. My gardener's son attended a public elementary school in Joey. And when he was in class 3, we discovered that he couldn't read at all. Couldn't read two-letter words like IS or NO. Certainly not three-letter words like THE. And so we moved him out of this school and put him in a private school. And 3 weeks later, he was reading. And the question for me is how come that a kid could be in school for 3 years and not know how to read IS? This is a big, big problem. And the fact that something like 2/3 of kids who complete junior high school are functionally illiterate is a big problem. It is beyond what I thought was a situation in this country. And I know we talk a lot about the girl child, but also the boys are not learning. And I think that all our data about schooling in Ghana is overstated. Because if somebody goes to school for 9 years and cannot read, that person has not, in fact, had a primary education. I'll say that again. If you send somebody to a building called a primary school, and that kid exits and cannot read, that kid has not gone to primary school. And this is the situation in Ghana. And it is unacceptable. It should be unacceptable to all of us. And we need to really figure out how to solve this problem. And by the way, young boys and young men who are not educated, who don't see a future for themselves, who encounter despair, they join gangs, they become criminals, they cause revolutions. Young girls who don't have an education, who don't see a future for themselves. In worst case scenarios, they get into prostitution. It's a real problem. This is a mess. And I can't say enough how important it is that we take this problem and deal with it in a very serious way. The other thing that I've discovered is that there's some private schools that are actually very under-resourced. I know of a few that are charging essentially 25 cents a day, 50 Ghana pesos a day for kids to be in school. Their teachers did not go to university. They did not go to teacher training colleges. The buildings are not very nice. They don't have resources. And yet, the kids exit those schools passing the BECE. When kids who've gone to a public school that has a teacher that has gone to a teacher training college, that has a nicer building, that has a soccer field, that kid is not passing BECE. There is a problem here that I think we need to address. And I would like to suggest that we need to look at what we're doing in teacher training colleges. We need to look at how we manage schools. What are the governance structures for our basic schools? How do decisions get made? If a teacher skips classes, doesn't come and teach kids, what happens to that teacher? Does that person continue to teach or have a job? And if we're going to be willing to pay people to not teach, then why would they teach? It's rational for them to not teach if you're going to pay them to not teach, right? So we need to look at how we manage the schools. We need to look at how teachers are trained and educated. And we also need to, I would say, set some rules of engagement. When I was a kid in primary school, there were teachers that would hit kids because they couldn't remember the 2 times table or the 4 times table or whatever. I'm not talking about corporal punishment for disciplinary problems. I'm talking about corporate punishment for not knowing. Corporate punishment because your hand is not on the book as you're reading the words. The teacher's going around whacking kids because they're not putting their finger on the book as they're doing this. And so you have whole classrooms of kids doing this who can't read, and they're doing it just because they don't want to get hit. And we know that there are no laws of physics or chemistry or biology that indicate that inflicting pain will help a child understand the 2 times table. It doesn't work. So why are we doing it? This should not be a discussion. There should be a law that prohibits teachers from hitting kids because they don't understand something. There should be a law that prevents teachers from hitting kids because they ask a question. It should be the law. It should not be a discussion about what is the culture of our schools, what is the culture of the teachers, etc., etc. Because for somebody to go to school for 9 years and not be able to read is a disaster. We need to ask the question, what are we doing to the minds of our children? What happens to the self-confidence of somebody who goes to school for 9 years and cannot read? What have we taught that person? Are we telling that person that he or she is stupid? Are we telling that person that he or she cannot achieve? What happens to their self-confidence? What happens to their performance horizons that they can see for themselves? It is unacceptable. And so I think that we need to really focus on this. I'd also like to add a third issue that we need to address, which is the issue of resources. I've been in education for 10 years, and I'll tell you every year, the Minister of Education, whoever that minister is, will make a statement that says schools and parents should not levy fees to kids because the law says that these schools should be free. Okay, this is fine, but there's a problem with this because this statement is not sufficient. We need to ask ourselves, what is it that caused the headmaster and the PTA to get together and decide we need to levy a fee for this school? Were they just being bad? Were they just mean people? What did they decide they needed that levy for? Maybe they needed to charge that levy so they can buy paper for their school. And if that is the case, then what the Minister of Education should do to that school is to go to them and say, oh, we're so sorry that you don't have paper. Don't charge a levy. Here's some money from the Ministry of Finance so you can go buy your paper. But they never do that second part. They just say, don't charge the levy. They never offer to replace that money with money from the government coffers. And so what they're essentially saying is, we forbid you from having the resources to do your work. That is what they're saying. And I've been hearing this for 10 years. And it should be unacceptable to us. We should be asking the deeper questions about how do we really educate kids. And why are we educating them in the first place? We need to understand why this is important. Because it seems to me that right now there's just this smoke and mirrors going on. We're sending kids to school, we're not teaching them anything, we're forbidding their parents from providing resources, etc., etc. And then we hit them when they don't understand the multiplication tables. So that's my contribution to this conference. I think we need to take education a lot more seriously